Hey everybody, this is a quick video that I want to do. Would be a full class lecture that I would usually do, but I'm gonna cut it down a little bit. What I want to do is talk about grammar, and I know this might seem a little pedantic. That you should be able to come into school and have a pretty good handle on the English language. But in my experience, that's not always the case. In fact, I've had quite a few papers turned in that were, even towards the end of the semester, that were not great. So what I want to do is go over some of the real basics of the English language, just to make sure that we're all on board and kind of having a basic understanding of the English language and the elements thereof. So I guess the first question is, why do we even have language? What is it all about, and what does it matter? Again, I'll tell you this probably more times than you'll want to hear, is that this is a thinking class, and language is really only either spoken language or written language is really only there as a symbolic or a way for us to express our ideas to one another. So when I tell you that this is more a class about thinking than it is about writing, I really mean that, because writing is nothing more than trying to solidify and concretize and put into symbols that are that can be exchanged and moved around the ideas that we all have. So that's really the reason why we have language, right? Is to be able to convey ideas to one another. So that to me is important for you to understand, that writing, we don't write just to write, we write because we're trying to express ideas to one another. Language is symbolic, or at least written language is symbolic, and what I mean by that is spoken language is uttered and conveyed between individuals. Now we can record it. It had to be done in between individuals until the early 1900s, when we began to really be able to record and transmit audio sounds. Before that, the only way that we could transmit writing ideas was through either having an interaction with another human being face to face, or through writing. And so writing became very important. Writing is symbolic, and what that just means is that it's symbols. So we're expressing ideas through symbols that can take any kind of shape or form, and that through however many thousands of different kinds of languages that we have or have had over the past. All written languages are unique in their own writing systems, but in that it's a representation of the humanity's ability to engage in symbolic language. So lots of other species across the world right now, everybody, all the species across the plant and animal kingdoms all usually communicate in one way or another. Trees communicate, plants in the forest all communicate to one another, and through chemicals and other means. Language or communication, not language, but communication amongst animals, we all know that. Dogs wag their tails, and the cetaceans, the whales, and the dolphins all have their ways of speaking and communicating, and chemical pheromones and all kinds. So communication is by far not limited to humanity. But the one thing that we do have that is unique is the ability to write down our communication, and to have it symbolized in such a way that other people can read it, other humans can read it at another time or another place. And so that's really unique. That's what's unique about us, and that's the important thing about language to think about. All right, so where did English come from? If you look at the overall map, you'll see that like most things that are part of our history, English came out of is a descendant of the original Proto-Indo-European language or languages that started in the Middle East and then spread out to the east, into India and in the Central Asia, and then also back west towards Greece and Turkey, and eventually into Western Europe. If we look at English, we'll see that it is a Germanic language. So in the Germanic family of languages, it spans a whole breadth of different types of languages that happen. Germanic is closest to a language called Frisian that's spoken on northern France. I think there's still some people that do speak it. Close to Dutch and German, very close to German. And I know a lot of people will make fun of German as sounding like it's got a lot of crazy noises that happen in it. But really, structurally, English and German are very, very close. And then also, if you see, I think it's Finnish and Swedish. There's a bunch of different languages that are in our language family. We have the Romance family of languages, or the Latinate family. Of course, we know Spanish and Italian and Portuguese, and all those languages come out of Proto-Indo-European. We also have closely related to us, if you go out towards the east, would be Hindi and Sanskrit are all are very loosely but still connected to English. So English has got a pretty long and complicated history, but that's what it is. All right, so let's get into the meat of of what I want to talk about. So let's go over the types of grammars that we have. So there are two main types of grammars. One is prescriptive and one is descriptive. And so descriptive grammar just says this is the way that a language is spoken. So if we're going to talk about prestige versions of English, we're going to say, that the types of language, English that is spoken on, the nightly news shows, probably in most politicians will speak in a prestige form of Mid-Atlantic English. That's kind of the standard, if we want to say, for, the way that the English language is spoken now. But that is in no way a limit to the different ways that English is spoken, and we all know this. If you live here in North Carolina, you understand that in the mountains it's going to be different than folks speaking in Raleigh, and then if you get out to Ocracoke, the language out there is going to be quite a bit different. Ocracoke is has some more of those more archaic English inflections that happen. And the color of older forms of English. There are tons of, if you go to, my wife's from New Hampshire, if you go up there, you're going to see language that's sometimes it's very hard to understand the people up there, but they all understand one another because that's the type of English that they speak. And we know that this is the case, that there's, Englishes that are spoken all across the country, all across the world, Australia, England, Wales. There's a million different Englishes that are spoken. And that's what descriptive grammar does. It says this is the rules of the language as it's spoken by the community of speakers who use that language. So if we have African American vernacular English, or African American English, Black English, whatever you want to call it, it has its own rules, which are different than the prestige forms of English. That's not wrong. It's not bad. It's got its own rules. I know a lot of people try to bag on African American English. There's nothing wrong with it. It is absolutely a viable language in the way that it's spoken. It can be seen as being not of the prestige versions of English. So sometimes there's some complication there. However, it's just the way it is. Now, when we get into prescriptive, that's the other type of grammar. What we're talking about there is this is the way that we say that the language should be spoken, right? So when I tell you that in the prestige form of English, American English, that it's a subject-verb-object language, and that we're going to use this kind of spelling, and the inflections at the end of verbs are going to be in this certain way. That's the way that we're going to say that it's spoken correctly. That doesn't mean that any of the forms of English or any of the dialects of English are wrong. It's just that the prescriptive way of saying it, and we have all had this in school before. This is the way you say the word properly. This is the way you have to put the possessive on the end. We've all been there. That's prescriptive. So there's two different types of grammar. So we'll get into a little bit of the prescriptive aspect of it now. A little bit descriptive too. English is a subject-verb-object language. What that means is that in English we prefer to hear a subject and then the verb and then the object. So let's say the girl threw the ball, and if we want to add an indirect object there, to the boy, right? So the subject in this sentence would be the girl, the verb was threw, and then the object is the boy, is the one who's receiving the action. We can have that's called an active structure of a sentence. You can have a passive structure of a sentence. It's absolutely fine, but it's not what we prefer to hear in English. It's just the way our language is structured. We also have first, second, and third person. We know this. First person singular would be me or I. Second person was you. Third person is he, she, or it. So it's singular. It's one individual. And then if we get into plurals, first person plural would be we, all of us. And then in English, we've strayed away from inflecting our language. It's changed a lot. So second person is they, is those people there, they. And then third person is as well. So we, I, you, he, she, it, and then third person plural, first person plural is we, and then they, right? All right. There are two parts to a sentence. Let's get this straight. There's two parts to a sentence. You have the subject. That's the person doing it, doing the work or the action, the thing doing the work or the action. And then after that is everything, basically everything, including the verb, and everything after the verb would be the predicate. That's as far into it as I want to get with you. This isn't a linguistics class, but just understand that there are two parts to a sentence, a subject, and then everything else, basically. All right, a couple of sentence types. Sentence, a simple sentence, compound sentence, and a complex sentence. So a simple sentence would be something like the girl threw the ball, right? So we know that the girl did some work, and then oftentimes there's going to be an object in there. So the girl threw the ball. A compound sentence is when you take two simple sentences and you combine them together with a conjunction. So and, but, and then are some conjunctions that you can use. And we know this. So the girl threw the ball, and the runner was tagged out at second base. Right. So we have two complete sentences that are happening here. If we have another one, the girl threw the ball, the girl threw the ball, the boy was tagged out. Right. So we don't. What we're going to have in this case is a complete complex sentence is where you have one complete sentence and then you have a subject, an incomplete clause, a dependent clause, which is going to require the verb or the subject from the complete sentence. All right, sorry, it's a little confusing. All right, but just understand that there are simple, compound, and complex sentences. You just got to make sure that when you're using compound or complex sentences that it's being written correctly. I can help you with that if you have questions. All right, so in English we have nouns, right? Nouns are people, places, things, and the one they never tell you in school, in elementary and middle school, is abstractions. And what does that mean? So let's think about love. Love is a thing, but you can't really put it in a box and send it to your grandmother. So that's an abstraction. It is a thing, but there's nothing you can't really nail that down. You can't nail love down, or hate, or anger. These are all things. These are all concepts and ideas, but it's an abstraction. All right, verbs are pretty simple. Those are our doing words: run, walk, whatever, boat, whatever the word is you want to use. Those are our doing words. Adjectives are the describing words for nouns. We know that. And then adverbs are the describing words for verbs. And then we also have pronouns, right? So he, she, it, they, them. A word of note, I'm going to probably tell you in your the feedback that I give you that you're using too many pronouns, or to be careful using your pronouns. Pronouns will weaken and dilute your writing almost every single time. If I ask you to pay attention to the pronouns, just go back and almost always all you need to do is just replace the pronoun with a person's name or something that's going to be a little more descriptive about who that person is. Oftentimes I see in first year writing is a whole sentence or a whole paragraph full of just pronouns, and I'm like completely confused. Like, who are you talking about? What is this person doing? Who are they? And what is the objects, the direct or indirect objects? I have no idea. It's just a whole big old mess of pronouns. So just be aware that that those aren't great for you, great for your writing, because it dilutes and weakens your writing in almost every case. Prepositions, this is our relationship words. So with, to, over, by, those are pretty simple. You can't really screw those up too much. And then our conjunctions are and, but, and those kinds of words that bring two different clauses together, two dependent clauses, or an independent clause and a dependent clause pulls those together, or combines, if we're using a series of words. All right. Talked a little bit about this already, but we're going to talk a little bit more about clauses, independent and dependent. So an independent clause is a complete sentence. It can stand alone. I think the example I have here is the girl threw the ball, right? So that's easy. Or the girl dug the ditch, or the woman dug the ditch. A dependent clause is a sentence fragment in which something is missing, either the subject or the verb. And when you have that missing, that's fine, you can do that. But what you have to do is combine it with a sentence that will help it let it borrow either the subject or the verb so that it can complete the idea. So if I tell you that this is a dependent clause, that's what I'm asking you to do, is to take that sentence fragment and connect it some way, either fill it out as its own complete independent clause, or connect it some way to another sentence that needs some help. All right, so plurals, possessives, and plural possessives. All right, so here's the difference. So plurals are more than one, we know that. Possessives are showing ownership of something, and then plural possessives can be kind of tricky. If you need help with those, that's fine. Like glasses. What do you do with a possessive with that ends with an X or a Z? I mean, these can be a little bit confusing, and that's fine. I'd be glad to help you out with it, but I just need you to understand that there are these differences between possessives and plural possessives. Plurals and possessives. The one that will trip you up every time is its and its, right? So it's with, generally, when we signify possession of something, we'll add an apostrophe. Well, in English, for some reason, this is one of those examples where English is a little bit screwy. It's with an apostrophe is the contraction for it is. Possession is it's its, no apostrophe. So that's one of those little weird one-off kind of screwy things that happens in English. So just be aware of that. All right. I shouldn't have to say this, but I'm going to say it because I see it happen a lot. Sentences start with some type of start with capitalization. Every single time. You don't get a choice. Sentences have to start with capitalization, and they end with some kind of punctuation. Period, exclamation point, although I don't want you to use exclamation points. Something, question mark. But sentences have to start with capitalization, and they have to end with some type of punctuation. You don't get a choice. So you guys have been doing English. You've been speaking and writing, thinking English for a long time. So please understand that you should know this by now. But if I tell you, don't do it twice. Okay. All right. And then the other thing is that is going to I think I mentioned this a little bit already, but verb voicing. And when I say verb voicing, what I mean there is active or passive. So an active sentence would be one where we follow the subject verb object SVO rule for English. So the girl threw the ball. The ditch was dug by the woman. The man changed the diaper. So someone is doing something to something else. And that's an active structure. Passive is when we flip that around. All right. So the ball was thrown by the girl. The ditch was dug by the woman. The diaper was changed by the man. So if you see that difference, it's a valid sentence structure to have it in a passive voice where the object comes first. Sometimes that's required and that's necessary, and it adds to the flavor and helps your writing out. But in almost every case, having your sentence be a subject verb object, the woman dug the ditch, is much cleaner. We just like it better in English. So keep that in mind. All right, I don't want to make this too long. The other thing I just want to say is that when it comes to descriptive and prescriptive grammar, every single person's language is absolutely perfect and fine. And I have no problem with any of the languages way that you speak English. It's wonderful, and I'm glad that we have the diversity. However, to be effective and successful here in an academic setting, you have to be able to code switch and understand the way that the prestige forms of language are spoken in the United States, in the educational system, the academic system here. You have to be able to be fluent in that and be able to switch in, to speak in, or to write in a way that adheres to the academic system. Is it fair? No. Do I like it? No. But that's the way it is. So there will certainly be instances where your ability to use your home language or the language that you speak amongst your friends will be acceptable. However, to be able to be successful in the academic setting, you gotta learn how to write in the way that the academic setting wants you to learn. So just keep that in mind. So if you're gonna be, what I'm gonna ask you to do is don't write in text, all right? That's not acceptable. It can't be acceptable here. And just understand that that you may not have been asked to in the past to write in the way that you're going to be asked to write. So if you need help, please just reach out, ask me, ask your peers, ask the Writing Center. There's tons of people that you can ask for help. We want you to be successful, and we want you to take in all of those tools that you will need to be able to be successful in school. Anyway, so that's my grammar talk. If you have questions about this at all, please let me know, and I'll be glad to talk to you about it. Thanks.